Hello guys and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now for some reason I have never done a video on a Mk2 Golf before, but we're going to put that right today. And how? Because today's video is about one of the rarest Volkswagens ever made. Just 71 were produced in the late 80s by Volkswagen Motorsport, and because Volkswagen's motorsport pedigree wasn't really that good back then, the cars haven't gained the iconic status of cars like the Lancia Delta Integrale or the BMW E30 M3, but that doesn't make this car any less special. It is, of course, the Mk2 Golf G60 Limited. As I mentioned in the intro, the key point with the G60 Limited is how rare it is. It's really important to emphasise this. Just 71 were made. That's a sixth of the production run of the Mk2 Golf GTI Club Sport S, to give you some perspective. They were handmade by VW Motorsport at the rate of one per week, and the price tells you a lot as well. So they were actually double the price of a Mk2 Golf GTI 16 valve and half as much again as a Rally, and a Rally was not a cheap car. So you can get the idea of who they're aiming. It's that proper car enthusiasts who were, in Germany in the late 80s, probably had lots of money to spend and they wanted the fastest Golf. There was a bit of a sense of humour as well, because, as we'll show you when we do the tour, it doesn't look like the fastest Golf, but it was by far the fastest Golf. In fact, it was actually the fastest Golf you could buy for 13 years after it came out. They're all individually numbered. I'll show you the plaque shortly. The colours initially for the first half built up to the end of 89 were a grey colour. I think it was called Schwarz Black, confusingly, black, but it was actually grey. And then the second half were a proper black called LA9V, which I think, going back from the depth of my memories, is brilliant black metallic. So yeah, there's slight variations like that, but otherwise they're pretty standard. Some customers had unique things done to them, but by and large they're all like this fine example we have here today. Performance wise, we'll get onto that when we go for a drive, but there are two types of ECU that these cars left the factory with. Volkswagen Motorsport admitted this afterwards, because some people were finding that they dynoed higher than the original 210 horsepower, and the later batch I think were 230 or 240, so 0 to 60 times quoted vary from like 7.2 to 6.4 depending which ECU they got. Well, this car's been tuned further than that, which we'll talk about again later. Let's now have a good look around it. Well guys, they say the Germans don't have a sense of humour, but why else would they make the fastest customer Golf look so plain? First thing you notice, we don't have the four headlight grille of the GTIs. We've just got the pretty poor halogen headlights. There is a reason for that though. That's because the intercooler is so large, the inner lamps would restrict the flow to that. So there is a functional reason, which I think is pretty cool. It gives the car such a different look to the GTIs. And this is a late 1989 build, so the Mk2s were in the 1990 model year by this point. That means the GTI got big bumpers, and yet this top Golf stayed with the small bumpers, which is really interesting. They're a bit different to normal though. We've got bigger, slightly taller indicators there, which are US spec. We don't have any colour in the bumper. We've got the blue stripe around the grille. We've got the VW Motorsport badge. But if you saw that in your rear view mirror while you're driving your 911 down the Autobahn in 1989, I don't think you'd get out of its way, but you would need to. This will do 140 miles an hour, and it kept up with most contemporary Porsches. It was the fastest production Golf for 13 years. 13 years until the R32 came out. Front spoiler will help keep the front end of the car down at high speed, but also it ducts air to the brakes. We've got two 80mm discs in the front, 239 at the back. The body shell's worth talking about. It's four-wheel drive, so we've got the Golf Synchro, which was a 90 horsepower Golf Mk2, really for farmers. It was all-wheel drive, but nothing really sporty. That's the back half. The front is Rally. That means we've got bigger wheel arches, which can house bigger wheels without rubbing. We've got 6.5 by 15 BBS split rims, 195/50/15 tyres. Unlike every other Mk2 Golf, G60 car's got a bonded windscreen, which increased body rigidity while reducing wind noise. The side of the car, well, there isn't really much to report apart from the wheels, and actually it's worth looking at the stance of the car. So this hasn't got spacers, it's not been lowered. You can see that the tyres are really quite far out, which will help give it stability. So yeah, there's not much on the side there, no coloured stripes above the mouldings like on a GTI, nothing. We do have half tinted rear lights though at the back. These were first introduced with the 10 millionth edition Golf GTI in 1988, and then of course they were fitted to the 16 valves with big bumpers later on. But it's a very rare sight to see them leaving the factory on a small bumper car. We've got the VW Motorsport badge there. The black badge should be silver, we reckon that's on modification, and actually the Golf badge may be as well, but it's a bit unclear as to what's what. Being a small bumper car, it's correct that it should have a non-painted tailgate pole there. The big bumper cars had that colour coded. At the back exhaust, well, this is a stainless replica of the original, but it's just as normal 2-piece 8 valve or 16 valve or G60 looking exhaust. So yeah, overall I'm just bowled over by its sort of simplicity and minimalist look. It's just truly beautiful. Right, let's go to the left hand side and have a look inside, because it is left hand drive. Now, key point with this car was, even though it had a very special engine we'll talk about in a second, it wasn't a stripped out rally car. It might have been built next to rally cars, but it was all about the equipment really, and it was probably the most luxurious Golf you could ever buy. It came as standard with the sunroof. That's not really rare, but it probably was for Germany. In the UK, every GTI had that. Leather was standard, very rare for a Mark II. Heated seats were standard on this dial here. We've had adjustable headlights there, so you could adjust those if you put weight in the boot and you wanted to drop the beam so you weren't dazzling. You did that with that. No air conditioning. Again, it's suspected that was a functional reason, because the air conditioning on G60s has an intercooler on top of the battery, which isn't as efficient. We've got leather contact areas, so steering wheel, gear knob and handbrake pull. 4 electric windows, again not uncommon on a GTI. But yeah, the overwhelming sense, especially for 1989, is luxury, which continues in the back. This has caught my eye. It's really unusual to have the seat adjustment there on this black sort of casing. Right, let's now have a look in the boot. So being four-wheel drive, boot floor is a bit higher, and with these cars you get this coarser carpet which looks a bit more luxurious. So yeah, not an awful lot to report, but the boot is sort of significantly shallower than in a two-wheel drive car. But I think when you see what's under the bonnet, you'll realise four-wheel drive is quite useful. Okay guys, unlike modern cars, there's a lot to talk about under the bonnet of the G60 Limited. Let's start off then with the unique plaque. So these were uniquely numbered by VW Motorsport. They've got the logo on there. This is number 032. That's very important. But they weren't just uniquely numbered like a Club Sport S. They actually had a different chassis number. It was a VW Motorsport chassis number rather than a Volkswagen one. And that kind of confirms their exclusivity for VW to mess around with their VIN system for this car. But they were just 71 made. It's still got a VIN plate on the inner wing there, but it's still saying VW. It says VW Motorsport, and the whole format of the number is completely different, and that's the same with the number on here. Let's talk about the hardware then. So what makes the G60 Limited special is that you have a supercharger with a 16-valve engine. In every other car, the supercharger was on an 8-valve engine. So in theory, you have super torquey bottom end and then the revvy top end of the 16-valve. Sounds like your ideal Mark II. And this one's been tuned as well. So we've got a bigger charger by a company called BBM, a well-known tuner. So we've got a bigger belt there. Interestingly, the bracket there for the charger has been machined to allow for this bigger belt. We've got a K&N cone filter simply because it needs more air to work. Maybe I prefer it standard, but it's there to do a job, and outside the car looks 100% stock really, apart from the odd badge here and there, so I'm okay with that. The car went on the dyno at AMD in Bicester with the previous owner and recorded 299.1 brake horsepower. So to give you some perspective, that is really Mark 7 Golf R levels of performance, which is pretty incredible. Worth noting, we've got ABS, which is very unusual for me to see it with a 16-valve engine, because there was no 16-valve that had ABS. So down there is the big chunky pump and the bulkier reservoir for the brake fluid. G60 bottom end torque, 16-valve top end. what's not to like. Well, let's go and see if the reality matches up to expectations, but going and driving this G60 Limited. Well guys, here we are driving the G60 Limited. I must remember to keep to the left-hand side of the road because it's left-hand drive, but you soon get used to it. And this is owner John. Now John's had this car for 17 years.
That's right, Andrew. I bought the car in June 2005 from a family that owned the car, based in Hampshire. Gary and Claire were their names. Very nice people, and they ironically owned two of these cars, which were in the magazine Volkswagen Driver back in 2004, which you may be aware of.
They were very famous in the scene because it was a couple that had two G60 Limiteds, and one on its own is pretty rare, and they were featured in the mag. I saw the cars at G2 International as well, probably about 2005, 6 maybe. No, he bought it though in 2005, so it must have been just before then.
I think that's right. They would have had great fun showing the car after. I think they got it resprayed in their ownership, and showing off the new paintwork would have been a perfect opportunity to attend the shows before I bought it.
Yeah, so 17 years with you, though a lot of that time you've had it off the road because you've got another G60 and another Mark II as well. You're a bit of a Mark II.
Yeah, as we hinted earlier on, there could be a small problem there. But anyway, at least it's a healthy problem. All of the cars work, and I'm proud to say I haven't started to collect random Golfs in my driveway that don't work.
Yeah. Well, your daily car's the Mark II 8-valve, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right there. It's a car I bought off my dad when I was a kid, 23 or 24, with 120,000 miles, no, 60,000 miles on the clock back then. And since then I've brought the total up to 304,000 miles, and it's still going strong.
Just running now, just running.
Well, they say they run in at about 60,000 miles. It's a labour of love. I have to spend a bit of money to keep it going, but it's thoroughly enjoyable and something I love driving.
Well, this is a bit different. So this has been your high days and holidays car, hasn't it? So
yeah, as I had a family, it takes second fiddle to the family for that reason. It's been in my garage, nice and dry, and there's no evidence of things deteriorating while my car's been in the garage.
It's a nice original car as well. It's not been restored. It's had a bit of touching up here and there, but it's still, you know.
Yeah, we've tried so hard to keep that original feel to the car, which it's very noticeable that it hasn't been taken apart. It's clean and dry, very, 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 very. I don't really know any rusty parts on the car, and it feels so tight as it came out of the factory, albeit with the 90,000 miles that it's showing on the clocks.
Yeah, most of that was done in its early years in Germany, though, where somebody used it like a normal car. Is that right?
I imagine it has been driven, like most cars, more strongly in the early days, up until 2000. Up until 2000, really.
Well, speaking of driving strongly, let's see if that promise of bottom end torque and top end 16-valve top end is really as good as it sounds. So this is, well, let's go into fourth. Let's try the torque. 2,000 RPM, and it is good to see, isn't it? And 3,000
power. It's very drivable if you mix the gears.
It's not a light car though. It's a bit heavier than a Rally, which was a heavy car already with four-wheel drive. So it's about 90 kilograms heavy, about just under 1,400 kilograms, I seem to remember. Yeah, that's getting on for modern day levels of weight, but we do have a lot of cars. So we've got four-wheel drive, 16-valve, supercharger, sunroof, leather, heated seats.
Yeah, there's lots of extras that are built in as standard, which is really a high point of this car. But I also believe that there's a lot of strengthening in the body shell from the Limited.
That's true. Yeah, VW Motorsport, you know, to give it its own chassis number. Imagine that in 1989. It's pretty good now.
It took me 10 years to find this car, and that's one of the reasons why.
Bloody hell. From what I can tell, that is all that was promised right there. Steering's nice as well. We've got power steering. It's got, you know, it's a bit weighty at slow speeds, but on the road now it feels fantastic. Right, so that's 3,500 RPM, fourth. You can feel the 16 valve bit working now. It makes all sorts of noise as well, chuffing and rumbling, and it's full of character. God knows what it would be like flat out on the autobahn at 140 something.
Well, we won't be talking about those sort of speeds.
No, not in this 50 mile an hour zone.
I believe that it has the ability to do very close to what the clocks say.
Yeah, some people have said it goes off the clock, but Peter Node from Volkswagen Driver Magazine kind of worked out that was pretty impossible with the gearing. So maybe 160 miles an hour is pushing it, but it wouldn't be far off. And bear in mind, this was 1989.
I don't think you could change the laws of physics for some reason, so I 100% agree with you there.
Yeah. In Germany, it would have been a consideration. People would have bought it for its autobahn performance, and it would have been a hell of a lot of fun. Maybe not in the dark with those little candles as headlights.
I've discussed with my friend in Germany whether we should think about changing those to the modern LED lights, and he's convinced you must leave it original.
Yeah,
so
no.
I'm going to follow that advice as well.
Crucial. It's a very special thing, and I'm very privileged to have driven it today.
I'm delighted that you've wanted to come and see me and look at the car. It's really refreshing to watch you at work and going around these roads with the perfect weather that we're having today.
We're very lucky, yeah. Weather was a consideration.
It's made it delightful and thoroughly worthwhile.
And it's for sale. You can buy this G60 Limited today. If it's been sold, I'll put that in the description of the video. But yeah, if you want a bit of this, get in touch. And hopefully seeing it operate in a video like this will sort of give you a better feel for the car than looking at photos.
Yeah, it's very important to hear the noise of the car.
Yeah, there's a lot of exhaust noise as well.
So we've got a lot happening at the front and the back with the supercharger. Yeah. The whistles and pops are all coming from when we're changing gear and the supercharger is stopping and starting again with the spinning. It's very impressive, it's very engaging, and it's thoroughly enjoyable to drive. It's got a nice gear change as well. The original reports of this Passat cable change weren't that great, but I don't have any problems with it. It's lovely. Apparently it's got a motorsport clutch, which is quite heavy, but it's not excessive. It's smooth. And you've got all the traction as well, being four-wheel drive. One last go. One last run through third gear then, yeah. Yeah, very special car. Well guys, as ever, thanks for watching this Volkswagen video. If you've enjoyed it, probably not as much as me, but if you have enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you for the next one very soon. Big thanks to John. Thank you,
for letting me have a go with this car, and the lights have turned green. Second gear.
Perfect, floor.
Blimey, it goes crazy at 5,000.